When Darth Vader lost on Mustafar to Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was put into the iconic Darth Vader suit, and once in the suit, his maximum power was only ever going to be about 80% of Darth Sidious. But what if the suit made Darth Vader more powerful than when he lost to Obi-Wan? Would he be able to assassinate his master? What would his goals be with this new power? Let's find out right now in today's story. Darth Vader slowly began rising from the medical table in his new body that was constructed. As he rose, he knew that he was no longer the man that he once was. His limbs were replaced with artificial cybernetics. His eyes, nose, and mouth were burned up, so he needed this mask to use them. He couldn't breathe without the suit. He couldn't move without the suit. Everything Vader had ever known as Anakin was different, and worse. He was a new man. Everything was worse, except for one thing. As the table came to a halt, Vader began to feel his power. His strength was different. It was better. He didn't need his limbs. The dark side of the Force had given him insane strength in the Force, and the limbs would be extremely powerful physically. And then a realization hit Vader, and he turned to the shadow beside him to ask, "Where is Padme? Is she safe? Is she alright?" in a metallic robotic voice. And then the shadow broke Vader's heart, telling him that in his anger, he killed her. And Vader knew it to be true. In the one moment where he had the chance to choose Padme over himself, Vader was selfish. And upon hearing this, his anger rose to a new level. Within a second, all of the droids and the machines in the room were crushed like a can of Jawa juice, and Vader grabbed hold of the shadow, his master, lifting him up by his throat. And he realized now is not the time. Vader let go. He had much to learn about the state of the galaxy. But the old man would die. As Vader let go, he told Palpatine that his power had faded, and the Sith Lord smiled. Good, Vader thought. His own manipulation starts now. Vader could feel his power, knew he was stronger, and in time, he would show his master exactly how strong he'd become. And over the next 4 weeks, Vader spent the time mostly alone or with the Emperor. Vader worked on his suit and meditated, diving deep into the dark side of the Force. He let it consume him, give him strength, give him focus. And he learned about this new empire. All the Jedi were either dead, hiding, or exiled. The clones were loyal to the Empire. There were many high-ranking officials that Vader had known in the Clone Wars, including Tarkin and Yularen. Vader learned every detail necessary for this empire, for what soon would be his empire. And after the 4 weeks, Vader was alone with the Emperor inside of his medical facility where Vader was put together. The Sith Lord began talking about how he could sense Vader's turmoil, his anger, confusion, sadness, and through that, only Vader could kill it through the Emperor. "Another false promise," Vader said to him, as the Emperor looked at him with intrigue and confusion. Vader was in turmoil about everything except Sidious. He had one thought about Sidious. He would kill him and take his place. And Vader said to him, "The same way you failed to keep your promise about Padme, you promised to save me from this turmoil." Vader was now standing up, and the Emperor was amused, saying, "Vader, I had nothing to do with the death of Padme Amidala. That was your fault." And Vader was ready. He slammed Sidious into the wall, catching him off guard. As Sidious got up, Vader said, "You made me into this. You made me kill her." And he threw droids at the Sith Lord at incomprehensible speed. Sidious fell to the ground, quickly getting back up now, bleeding, fear in his eyes. He shot lightning at Vader, and Vader caught it with his lightsaber. Then, he used the Force to push the lightning back, knocking Sidious back once more against the wall. Vader had him. Vader ignited his saber for a killing blow, throwing it at him, yelling, "I hate you," and before he could strike, lightning engulfed him. Sidious had faked being defeated for an opening. Vader writhed in pain now, engulfed by the lightning, but he knew it was his body and his suit failing him. But his anger, The dark side gave him power beyond Sidious. As Vader's suit began to fail, he gathered all of his strength for one final move. With all of his power, he reached up, grabbed Sidious's hands with the Force, and broke them. The lightning was cut off. Fear covered the Sith Lord's face. Vader pulled him in, grabbing his throat and saying, "You destroyed everything that I was, everything I loved, and now I will rule your empire and the galaxy will forget about you." The Sith Lord, shocked and scared, had designed Vader's suit to cripple him, but somehow, the power of Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, had overcome it all to use the suit to enhance his power. Sidious could only ask, "How?" in between dying breaths. Vader replied, saying, "The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural." And Vader crushed the Sith Lord's neck, then cut him in half. He was dead. The Empire belonged to Darth Vader. He instructed the droids to incinerate what was left of the body, and Vader went on to take the necessary steps to take over the Empire. From the throne, he sent a message through the HoloNet, the best way to reach everyone in the galaxy. Vader revealed Emperor Palpatine had been assassinated by a Jedi squadron led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. Vader mentioned he was the number 2, and he would be taking over the seat of the Emperor. He debated mentioning Yoda in the holo image, but he wanted the galaxy to think Yoda was dead, and Vader announced he would be officially taking over effective immediately. And the faces of Kenobi and Ahsoka would be seen everywhere. If they were seen, it should be reported immediately to the Empire, their faces on every wall. Vader was intent on finding them, and this may be his best way. Sidious had kind of ignored the Jedi after Order 66, but Vader did not have the same intention. And from there, Vader didn't mess with many of the systems that the Emperor had put in place, but he promised to be less complacent with laziness on any planet. If he heard reports of governors or leaders on planets falling short, he would personally replace them. The Empire remained largely the same, just with stricter rule from the top and with an all-new leader. Anyone who came in to oppose his rule, Vader simply showed his might, showed what he was capable with the Force, and the troopers were loyal to him, loyal to the Emperor, which was now Vader. And the Inquisitors would go out hunting Jedi. Vader made it an interest and a need to hunt down any Jedi remaining. He was only interested in Kenobi and Ahsoka himself, though. When they were found, Vader would go get them. And now the Empire was thriving through the members of the galaxy, and they did not like it throughout the galaxy, but there was finally peace, and no one dared oppose him right now. And after months of ruling, Vader still felt empty. Though he had killed the Dark Lord and taken over, he was still broken, sad, angry, destroyed. Padme should be ruling with him, Vader thought, and with his power, with his time of peace without war, Vader had time to dive deeper than ever into the power of the dark side. And there was one power in particular that Vader needed: Dark Transfer. The power to bring one back from death, possibly even at the user's peril. Vader had all the power in the galaxy. He had an empire. He had everything except the one thing he truly wanted: Padme, and he would get her. So Vader trained and practiced more and more through the months, diving deeper into the dark side by meditating or going on personal missions to kill Jedi who had survived. Despite the Inquisitors doing their job very well, Vader occasionally decided he did need to go out and kill the occasional found Jedi. His power continued to grow, but he knew if he wanted to unlock more of the dark side, he had to do something that would further destroy the light inside of him. Killing random Jedi just didn't do the trick. He needed something similar to the Jedi Temple massacre in terms of his emotions, something that would force him to embrace the full power of the dark side. And while considering this, Vader was alerted to a Jedi hiding on Thebeska. The 8th brother had discovered Ahsoka Tano, and as instructed, alerted Vader instead of engaging. This was the opportunity that Vader needed. He would kill Ahsoka, and the dark side would engulf him even more. Only then could he bring Padme back. So Vader took off to Thebeska. pushing any bit of Anakin down that remained. Anakin wanted to talk to Ahsoka, to help her, but Vader needed her dead to bring back Padme. He needed to go further into the dark side to unlock these new abilities that he craved. And upon landing, Vader met with the 8th brother to find the location of Ahsoka Tano. And once in the small town where she was seen, Vader sent the Inquisitor away. This was his fight. Now to draw out Ahsoka. The best way to draw out a Jedi, or former Jedi, was to hurt innocent people. So Vader began walking through the small town. He easily brought down a small house with the Force, killing those inside. A man ran out of his nearby house to investigate, and Vader held him up by the throat, dragging him along as others emerged, and Vader threw the choking man at them, then lifted them up, slamming them into the ground. 2 more, and Vader threw his crimson lightsaber, decapitating them. This area of people were quickly dead. Where was Ahsoka? And as Vader looked around, he heard a lightsaber ignite behind him. Vader turned to see Ahsoka wielding the blade of the 8th brother. She killed him immediately after Vader sent him away. What a failure of an Inquisitor. Vader looked at Ahsoka as her face began to contort. She began to realize who was in the suit. Ahsoka stumbled backwards, then looked up in horror as she said, "Anakin." Vader held his lightsaber to his mask and said, "Anakin is gone. Today, you will die too." And Vader charged at Ahsoka, using the Force to enhance his speed and movements, despite the suit trying to hold him back. Vader was now a master of the suit. It gave him strength, the pain and the suffering from it only making him stronger. And Ahsoka blocked Vader's strike, 2 red sabers held against each other now. She tried looking into the eyes to see Anakin, but saw only darkness. So she broke off, flipped backwards, and said, "Then I will avenge his death." Vader lunged forward, his lightsaber slashing through the air with deadly precision, and Ahsoka met his attack with a swift, agile movement, her blades weaving a dazzling pattern of defense and counterattacks. The 2 of them danced across the now rocky terrain, the red blades illuminating the darkening sky. Emotions surged within Ahsoka. She felt the weight of the past and the pain of their broken connection. Tears began to well up in her eyes, but she had to push them aside, focusing now on the fight, refusing to give up on Anakin, even if he seemed lost to her forever. Vader continued to fight the former Padawan, but he knew that he could easily win this fight with his newfound power. Ahsoka had been without a lightsaber for a year, and Vader had perfected his skills. But it was like Anakin was inside, holding him back from the lethal strike. No more, Vader thought. Vader's power was overwhelming, his strikes ruthless, his mastery of the Force unmatched, and Ahsoka did fight valiantly, her skills honed through the years of training, knowing who she was fighting, but the darkness that consumed her former master was insurmountable. Vader pressed his advantage, relentless in his assault, exploiting every weakness in Ahsoka's defenses, and then Vader's blade found its mark, cutting through Ahsoka's defenses with a swift, devastating strike. Ahsoka stumbled back, her lightsaber falling from her grasp. She collapsed to her knees, her breath ragged, staring up at the imposing figure before her. Vader stood now, his mask hiding any semblance of remorse or regret. He gazed down at Ahsoka, his voice cold and devoid of emotion, as Anakin emerged to say, "I'm sorry, Padawan." Ahsoka's heart broke at his words, tears streaming down her face. She reached out a trembling hand, desperate to reconnect with the man she once knew, feeling a bit of Anakin. But the darkness claimed him. She whispered, her voice filled with sorrow, "Anakin, please." And Vader raised his lightsaber, poised to strike the final blow. Ahsoka closed her eyes, a mix of resignation and unyielding love for her former master enveloping her. The red blade descended, and in that fleeting moment, their connection was forever severed. Vader fell to his knees. Ahsoka was dead. The loneliness in this galaxy grew to a point he'd never felt. Everything he loved as Anakin was gone. It was only Darth Vader, now and forever. Obi-Wan Kenobi tended to a fire on Tatooine when he felt a divergence in the Force. He felt Ahsoka Tano disappear, and he felt Anakin for the first time since Mustafar. He knew now that Anakin was alive. No, Obi-Wan reminded himself. Somehow, Vader was alive. Anakin was dead. And Obi-Wan's purpose remained the same. With a deep breath, he went back to the fire. Days later, Darth Vader sat in his throne in what used to be the Jedi Temple. He had it resurrected into his own palace to remember his victory and remember the pain that occurred here. The ghosts of the fallen Jedi often haunted him and allowed him to go deeper into the dark side. And Vader went to his hidden room, the room that he kept all of his experiments with the Force, all of the holocrons, the forbidden Jedi archives, everything he needed to learn about the dark side was here. But today, Vader brought a royal guard with him for unknown reasons. The Royal Imperial Guards were redesigned by Vader to have a more menacing look that was based off of Vader himself. And once alone in the room with the guard, Vader began to drain the life force from him in less than a minute. Vader had to be careful of how he killed this guard. He had to make it possible for him to be revived. And once this happened, Vader spent days practicing dark transfer on this clone Imperial Guard. Eventually, he was just reviving him, killing him, and reviving him over and over until Vader had perfected the skill. He could save people from death. He'd gone far enough into the dark side to learn this unnatural power. He could bring them back. Now, he could bring back Padme, and together they could rule the galaxy. Vader was blind to everything except for her. He had promised her so long ago that he would learn to stop people from dying, and he had done it. She would be so grateful. Everything would be right. He got into his ship for Naboo, alerting no one of where he was going, and upon landing, Vader made his way to the grave of Padme Amidala. He'd never been here. He couldn't possibly come here without the power to save her. It was hard for him to be stealthy, but today Vader made his way discreetly to her grave, where she'd been entombed. And once inside, Vader placed his hand on the tomb, pouring the Force into it. The power of dark transfer began. He'd never done it on someone dead for so long, but after 10 minutes of extremely focused power, Vader felt a presence. The presence of Padme. He'd done it. Vader ripped off the top of the tomb, and his wife lifted her head up, sitting up now, inside of the tomb. In Padme's mind, she had just been giving birth moments ago, but she remembered dying after giving birth to 2 children. Now in front of her stood a menacing man in a dark black suit. She had no idea who this was. Where was she? What was going on? And Vader could only say, "Padme," in a robotic voice. Under the helmet, he smiled for maybe the first time since being put into the suit. But Padme backed up in fear before Vader could say, "Padme, it's me." He couldn't bring himself to say Anakin's name, so he said, "Your husband." And Padme's eyes widened in disbelief, the same way Ahsoka's had. Struggling to comprehend the impossible, she said, "Anakin, what have you become?" And Vader slowly removed his helmet to show Padme the burned, pale, sad face of what was once Anakin Skywalker. And he said, "Don't you see, Padme? I've become everything I promised you I would. The most powerful person in the galaxy. I can save others from dying. Palpatine is dead. I have brought peace to my new empire." For Padme, it was like she time traveled to a future where her worst nightmare had come true. Vader, desperate to show her that this was how things were supposed to be, remembered a time, years ago, when the two of them were alone on Coruscant, and he'd given Padme his lightsaber to show her that she was his life. He spoke now, saying, "Padme, nothing is more important than the way I feel about you. This weapon is my life." And he handed it to her once again. Padme grabbed it and remembered that moment on Coruscant. That was Anakin. They had shared a kiss, and Padme began to feel tears in her eyes as she remembered what she told him at the time. She had said to Anakin, "It was, the work we do is in service to the Republic, Anakin, to protect those who otherwise would be powerless to protect themselves." And she knew now that love had truly blinded him. He had killed so many, built an empire instead of the democracy, instead of the Republic. Families, children's, their friends, maybe Ahsoka and Obi-Wan all dead. All for her? She looked into his sad yellow eyes, the bright blue of Anakin now gone from them. She faked a smile. and went in for a hug. With another tear, Padme ignited the lightsaber directly through the chest of Anakin. The blade ripped through his breathing apparatus, the nutrient tubes, and broke his heart. Anakin had not sensed this. He truly was blind to Padme. His eyes opened wide, and he fell to the ground next to her tomb. As he lay there, he could have killed her with the Force. He could have gotten revenge, but he still loved her, and the last thing he heard was her say, "I'm sorry, Anakin." Padme looked at her fallen husband, and she placed his lightsaber next to him. She remembered Anakin. Anakin would have wanted this man gone, and she set off to find her children, and this is how the rest of the story would go. Padme would go to Alderaan in search of Bail Organa, and once she found him, she explained what she could of how she'd returned, and was then reunited with a young Leia. From there, they went to Tatooine to find Obi-Wan and Luke. With Vader and Palpatine gone, Obi-Wan found Yoda, and they all went together to Alderaan. Padme had to stay hidden, but together with Bail, they would begin the rebellion. Padme would never stand for an empire. And over the years, Luke and Leia would train with Obi-Wan and Yoda, with Padme overseeing it all. They would train and live on Yavin 4, building a rebellion, with the Ghost Crew and many others who would join. The Empire would struggle to recover after the disappearance of Vader, but ultimately, Tarkin would take over. But once Luke and Leia were fully trained Jedi Knights, the rebellion had grown to a level never before seen, especially without Vader and Palpatine. And eventually, the rebellion would take down the Empire. Padme Amidala would emerge to be the new Chancellor of the New Republic. Luke, Leia, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ezra would form a new Jedi Order. And that's where our story ends today. It may be a bit controversial, having Padme be the one to kill Anakin, to kill Vader, but I think she never would go back with him after he did what he did. And I think that's actually mentioned in Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader. Palpatine says that he knew that Padme would never go back to Anakin after what he did in the temple. And he's right. Padme saw this man that had done the worst things in the galaxy for her, and knew she had to stop him. That's where, I mean, you can also argue maybe Vader would have sensed it and killed her, but no, I think Vader would have just, at that point, almost accepted it. It's a tragic story. But I wanted to do a conflict of Vader and Anakin and Padme. Let me know what you thought. I do hope you enjoyed. Again, maybe some plot holes, maybe some things that don't quite make sense, but it's a story I haven't really gone down before, so hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next video.